Alright, so our first volunteer was Eryn McConnell, and I super appreciate that she sent me her first page. I think she sent me her whole first chapter. This is an unpublished draft, just so everyone is aware, so hopefully we can find a good amount wrong with it for her. Alright, so we're doing this in real time. I haven't looked at it at all yet. I'll try and fast forward through like me silently reading to myself before I find things. I still haven't quite figured out how I'm gonna format this whole thing yet. The only thing I see here is all her past swirled around Sable. This, not really anything wrong with this. Again, this is gonna be an issue of grammatically correct versus like how funky is it to read? Is it jarring? So why do we have the pronoun before the proper noun? It's just a little bit weird. If it were me, oh good, she's giving me permission to go in here. I would do the proper noun first, and that just makes more sense, I think, to most readers' brains. Corvus is a very crow-like name on her shoulder, so she's giving a lot of information without having to tell us information. He's a crow. I think he's a crow. Alright, so here's the second thing I'm going to point out. Apologies for the jets. This double his mind. There's probably a way to avoid this. So Corvus shifted on her shoulder as he opened his mind to her. His mind felt like old corridors and dusty books. So we can either try to fuse these sentences, or like we could always just go with the it and see how clear that is. Corvus shifted on her shoulder as he opened his mind to her. It felt like old corridors and dusty books swept with stormy rain and mossy towers. So that's not that bad. That's clear. I don't think anybody is going to confuse it with her. It was, his mind is the last it that was talked about. Her shoulder, it's not going to get confused with her shoulder. Her shoulder doesn't feel like old corridors. So I think this is plenty clear enough. It refers to the last it. I think it's good. Alright, so this, you kind of have, his voice was old and deep. Nothing like what she would have imagined. And then he sounded like. So you've got two different introductions for the same topic here, which is a bit awkward. So sometimes you've got two kind of mutually exclusive ideas. This happens pretty often when I'm beta reading, is I see that somebody wanted to describe something in two different ways, or wanted to say two different actions, and they don't fit together. So here she's having to split it up into two sentences because she's got nothing like she would have imagined, and like one of her ancient mage teachers, perhaps. So nothing like she would have imagined is kind of weak to me. He's a crow. I would not imagine that he's... what are you going to imagine a crow sounds like? They sound like crows. So if you're in a crow's head, what are you going to imagine he sounds like? I don't know. So I'm going to delete that and kind of fuse these together. Delete that. His voice was old and deep, like one of her ancient mage teachers, perhaps. But there was no time to ask him more. So there we've got, instead of having that kind of jarring subject restart, where you've got the same subject restarting in two different sentences. His voice was, and he sounded like. This is a little bit more natural sounding when you read it. Alright, so you've got this figure swathed in black, going through Corvus' mind. And he's gone by the time, it's only 2 paragraphs and then he's gone. So that's a little awkward. And I feel like he comes out, says one thing, and then leaves. Oh, I guess he says 2 things. No, it does not. So my suggestion here is to make it clear that this is Corvus. Clearly this is like the incorporeal form of Corvus. So we're gonna take Corvus the Crowborough, and we're gonna put him as the tag here. So you can see that she actually did that down here. Corvus hummed. No, it does not. So I do feel like I would like it to be here. That does make that paragraph kind of chunky. I think that's fine. I think that's okay. It would be even better if you could find, is he talking or is this just like telepathy? You're creating this image of the man swathed in black. Is he in this image speaking, or is he just there standing but the words are still telepathic and his mouth isn't moving? So try to, put a little bit, not much, a little bit more detail into this image. Even if it's just like the human form of Corvus spoke or something, here at this part. But anyway, it's not a big deal, but it does sort of throw me off when I can't picture something, or when I'm picturing something but there's an important detail missing. We've got a sort of pattern that adjusted over the course of these lines. And it's just the subject, verb, the subject, verb. And this is a little different. The subject, verb, the subject, verb. Okay, so it does start to sound a bit formulaic and awkward in this section because of all these sentences that are, sort of similar. So I do think that it would be worthwhile to just go in and fix this a little bit. So let's try to find like the easiest to fix first. The door blazed out. I really don't even know what that means. I feel like that's kind of some kind of magical image. I'm picturing Star Wars. I'm picturing Star Wars when they've got the lightsabers and they're cutting a hole in the door. But I don't really know what's going on there. So I'm a little bit afraid to touch this sentence. Shadows begin to line the edges. I mean, I think I can fix this actually without hurting anything, even though I don't know what's going on. I don't feel like that's like a super important thing to make clear. There's a magical door and it's opening. That's enough information for me. Shadows begin to line the edges of the door as it blazed out. Alright, so there you got a little bit of a different sentence structure to break that up. Alright, so you've also got in here, in addition to that formulaic start, she's watching the door open, it began to open. I don't really like that repetition very much, so when we go to fix this, I would like to kind of do away with that. It began to open here. And then we see inside the room here. So we don't really need this. Watch the door open. Also, she watched kind of creates that and uncomfortable POV distance, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I always prefer a closer POV. Fixing this a little bit, we could do, I don't want to delete the whole thing because I don't trust myself to remember. As she watched, the bones in her hand warmed and began to vibrate. So that fixes the double door open. Doesn't exactly fix it in the way I hoped. It does fix it. And the formulaic start to that. The battle had begun. I feel like leaving that is probably for the best, kind of like leaving the crow. The crow is probably for the best here. There's nothing wrong with this sort of sentence structure, and it does have its place. All right, so we've got a bit of redundancy here. Around her, it wrapped itself around the room. I mean, if she felt it, if she felt the vibrations, they're around her. And if it's around the room, it's around her as well. So I don't think you need that at all. That can just go by. All right, so that was kind of the detail work. I've read a book of Eryn's before, so I really didn't expect to find a lot, and I didn't. It was just a few small things. Overall, I think it was a great first page. I expect to be confused in any kind of fantasy when I'm starting out. I actually prefer to be confused versus having things sort of explained to me. There's a couple images that I think I would like more of the image, not an explanation. I don't want any more explanation on anything. But this image here and the image, the blazing door image, because I'm just picturing Star Wars, which is fine, especially if that's the image you want. But I do feel like those images would have helped my brain a little bit. But aside from that, there's good flow. You can see there's a lot of paragraph and sentence variation overall. Yeah, I think it looks good. I don't have any other advice for this.